Ciao a tutti, mi chiamo Johan Vrancken. Volevo cominciare così. Ho vissuto a Genova, ho lavorato alla Saiva con tutti i colleghi qui che sono presenti qui oggi. E loro sanno che all'epoca anche lì il mio italiano era molto, la capacità di parlare in italiano era molto ristretto, e così dopo 2004 ho perso un po' ancora più la capacità di parlare in italiano. Così, scusami quando cambio volta in volta per l'inglese anche. Cortamente, solo per introdurre cosa faccio oggi. Oggi lavoro per un'azienda che si chiama Nielsen. Nielsen è il leader mondiale, il leader globale di ricerca di mercato, ricerca di consumatori. Per il momento siamo ancora un'azienda, ma dopo 3 mesi saremo 2 aziende, un'azienda che si chiama Nielsen, che è le media ratings, allora che contano tutte le persone che hanno visto dei programmi nella televisione, e NielsenlQ, io sono parte del NielsenlQ, che conto tutte le cose che sono vendute nel mondo di supermercati globali. Allora, per me 2020, e non ho una storia leggendaria di Matteo e Marco, perché avevo portato qualche esempio più di base cosa abbiamo fatto nel 2020 in un'azienda mondiale che lavora nella ricerca di mercato. Ho tanto rispetto per cosa avete fatto Marco e Matteo per veramente velocemente cambiare la missione dell'azienda per utilizzare queste navi per fare le cose che voi avete raccontato. Comunque lasciami condividere qualche esempio sul livello di organizzazione che abbiamo fatto noi, forse può portare un po' di ispirazione per tutti qui. Avevo qualche soggetti: input, contesto, feedback, trasformazione digitale, strumenti digitali, progettazione organizzativa, rete di squadre, purpose, non so veramente come tradurre questo in italiano, scopo motivazionale, purpose, destino, non lo so. Mission, forse sì. E cosa sono qualche soggetti dove abbiamo qualche esempio da condividere con voi today. Allora, su un livello input, contesto, feedback abbiamo veramente velocemente visto che nell'un tempo normale dove lavori nell'azienda globale dove abbiamo già avanti di squadre molto virtuali, perché siamo partiti, siamo nel 105 paesi nel mondo. Abbiamo visto che l'importanza di avere input delle dipendenti, l'importanza di portare contesto per tutti i dipendenti, l'importanza per dare feedback era molto più importante nel 2020 nel contesto di Covid. Dare l'opportunità ai dipendenti per dare input. In a normal year abbiamo una volta per anno abbiamo un survey di employee satisfaction, la soddisfazione di dipendenti. In 2020 abbiamo fatto 4 volte, solamente per nella continuità avere input del dipendente, come vanno le cose, quali sono le sfide, quali sono i problemi che abbiamo tutti rincontrato sul livello professionale o anche sul livello personale, e poi anche fare di altre indagini. Siamo un'azienda di ricerca di mercato, allora fare di indagini internali e nella nostra DNA, per anche trovare come le gente funzionano senza il supporto di un ufficio, senza il supporto dei sistemi che abbiamo normalmente nei tempi normali. E questo ha aiutato di vedere dove andano le cose bene, dove abbiamo fatto corrections along the way. Mi ricordo, per me la 2020 prima parte ero il direttore generale del nostro business a Benelux. in giugno ho cambiato ruolo e adesso sono, come Alberto ha detto il leader globale per il nostro industry vertical, per la pubblico e la cosa non profit. All'inizio avevo dei dipendenti, dei colleghi o Pays-Bas o Neerlandia, si dice Neerlandia? Sì.
Irlanda.
Perché sono belga. What do I know how to call the Netherlands in Italian? Avevo un collega che aveva un problema alla casa perché non avevo una camera a casa where he could work, aveva troppi bambini che facevano troppi casini e tutto quanto. We were very close to get him into kind of a depression, to get him into a burnout, making sure that we provided coaching, making sure that we provided support, making sure that even when our global team was saying, look, the office needs to be closed, giving him an exceptional approval to go to the office and to make sure that he didn't go into burnout, he didn't go into a depression. Le cose che abbiamo fatto così con velocità, senza pensare troppo, senza fare i commiti di decisione, ma giustamente fare the right thing in the right moment e andare avanti dopo questo. Anche dare contesto. Non puoi you cannot underestimate the amount of second guessing people do in times of crisis. And so if you have an organization where people have to second guess, how are we doing? What are we doing? Are we doing well? How is this impacting our business? How is this impacting me? How is this impacting my work? You need to take that out of the equation. And taking that out of the equation is by giving context again and again and again. And I'm sure you talked about that this morning as well. Apologies for not participating. We have a global team meeting as well. So I'm escaping from that global meeting to be with you for half an hour and then need to go back. But giving that context, right, again and again and again. La cosa che ho imparato molto l'anno scorso è non puoi comunicare troppo. Non puoi comunicare troppo. You need to repeat and repeat di nuovo, di nuovo, di nuovo. Anche quando tu pensi che tu stai facendo la stessa cosa over and over again, è molto importante perché così arriva il messaggio importante che no, non ti preoccupa del tuo lavoro, non ti preoccupa dell'azienda. We're doing good, we're doing well, and we're going to organize ourselves in a way that will go through this crisis as a whole. And I'll come back to that topic later on when we talk about progettazione organizzativa. Da un punto di vista trasformazione digitale, il messaggio è semplice. Se tu non hai cominciato il tuo percorso di trasformazione digitale, there is no better time than right now. It's a good time, and I like to look at things in a positive, optimistic way. It's a good time to experiment with new approaches. It's a good time to experiment, including things. I'll give you a very personal example. Given the fact that we are a global organization, we are already organized pre-COVID quite in a digital fashion and so forth, managing quite a lot of data around the world and protecting that data. So we had great circumstances to work in that way. However, if I look at one of the changes we made a couple of years ago was moving away from Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, Microsoft PowerPoint into a digital suite of Google solutions, which is all in the cloud. And until last year, I never liked that. I kept on using Excel, I kept on using Word, I kept on using PowerPoint because when I started working more than 20 years ago, that's where I was good at. I can navigate Excel, I can navigate PowerPoint. The Google Suite has its own limitations, and I never really adopted that. And now, having gone through 2020 as a very pragmatical example, the fact that all these things are in the cloud, the fact that all the sheets are in the cloud, the fact that all the PowerPoint presentations are in the cloud, the fact that by default, even if you have a local team, we're working virtualmente. Now you can collaborate in these things in a virtual way. You're working on the same version. Gone are the days that you're sending Excel files version 32.3 to another colleague and then receive version 36.5 3 days later from a completely other colleague and so forth. So the adoption of that, I think it got accelerated in our organization quite heavily. Also there, we work quite a lot with FMCG, we work quite a lot with retailers, FMCG retailer. Allora lavoriamo con i supermercati per misurare la vendita dei prodotti e poi abbiamo visto veramente che ci sono i partner di supermercati, i retailers che sono molto avanzato nel loro trasformazione digitale, che abbiamo veramente lavorato sul investments in creating an e-commerce arm, even if you would only have physical stores. And you saw throughout the crisis how much more those partners that were investing in e-commerce already years ago were a lot more privileged and advantaged than the change that didn't invest and that had to start up their e-commerce sales throughout the crisis. And you see that in Italy, you see that throughout Europe, you see that throughout the world, even FMCG, so grocery, consumer goods, what you buy in the supermarket, even those sales have, because of the situation, have increased quite a lot last year. Moving on to the next topic, la progettazione organizzativa e le rete di squadre. Un altro punto lì è in the middle of the year, like I said, my job changed, and my job changed because our organization changed. Even with COVID-19, we decided in the middle of the year to change our business and go from one business to 4 global business units. And that was one of the biggest reorganizations that we did. Wasn't driven by COVID, was driven in preparation of becoming an independent business unit, which we're now becoming in April of this year. But still a lot of changes happening at the same time when all these things are happening out there. And we needed to find out a way to make this work, because rather than having a market level driven organization whereby, like, my role was managing the Benelux, somebody else was managing Italy, somebody else was managing France, to go to global business units whereby we're more managing the business in terms of this part of the business, may that be retail measurement, is organized in a global level like that. This part of the business where I belong to, consumer insights, customized research, is organized globally like that. We needed to figure out how to bring these teams together and how to make the most out of a business which in some markets might be very large and very established, and in some markets might be very small. And so to get that scale, what we introduced was a concept which I recommend you to look up if you don't know about that concept yet. But that's a concept that we borrowed from McKinsey. It's called Network of Teams, le rete di squadre. Per me è stato un bel framework per organizzarmi nel mio ruolo con un nuovo business globale che abbiamo organizzato le squadre together. And just quoting a couple of the 4, let's say, key principles, le 4 principali chiavi di questo concetto di McKinsey, le rete di squadre, is first, launch your teams fast and build along the way, build as you go. No time to waste, operate with velocity, and just 80-20, don't try to get it right. We're a data company, we're a research company. People pay us by being 100% right. So it's not in our DNA to only be 80% right. We need to be fully right. So for us, it was important to move away from this try to be perfect to just try to be pragmatic, well, and get it done, launch those teams fast and build along the way. Second principle is get out of the way, especially for senior leadership, but stay connected. So coming back to the concept about getting input, explaining the context, giving feedback in a reorganization is more important than ever, and that in a reorganization during a crisis. Third point is champion radical transparency and authenticity. Questo non era troppo difficile per noi perché abbiamo una cultura molto aperta, molto trasparenza, molto autentica. La cultura di Nielsen era buono per fare questo. Maybe if you have an organization whereby the level of politics is slightly higher, then that becomes more of a challenge. But championing from the top that radical transparency and authenticity, it's very important. And then turbocharge a self-organization, making sure that those teams know that they can self-organize themselves further and empower them to take the right decisions with velocity there as well. It is a McKinsey principle, so if you Google network of teams McKinsey, you will find much larger articles about this, explaining this in a much broader way. But I'll give you one example where I liked it to come together for our organization, which was we were quite protected with regards to our FMCG business. L'idea che tutto il mondo era a casa, mangiava a casa, comprava tutto quanto per consumazione alla casa, era buono per questa parte di nostro business che è legato su questa industria. Tutti i clienti che avevamo nella FMCG, Procter Gamble, Unilever, Reckitt Benckiser, tutto quanto, avevano delle domande per come il consumatore adesso, come sta cambiando il consumatore, come sta cambiando l'elasticità di prezzi e tutto quanto. E per noi, per questa parte del nostro business, era molto positivo perché era tanto lavoro lì, ma abbiamo anche altre parti del nostro business, per un esempio il mio nuovo ruolo con il business di lavorare con i governamenti, con l'organizzazione pubblica, con l'organizzazione non profit, ma anche expanded verticals, lavoriamo tanto anche con l'industria turistica. We work quite a lot with airports. We work quite a lot with airlines around the world. And I can tell you that business dropped from 100% to close to zero or even zero overnight because of the fact that the tourism industry, like Matteo shared already, was under a lot of pressure and still is under a lot of pressure today because of the crisis. So how do you work with that? And then the network of teams concept helped us quite drastically, becoming a global organization, having parts of the business that are going really well, having other parts of the business that are under pressure, and you have people there. Avevamo dei dipendenti lì che non avevamo niente da fare perché non era lavoro, non era progetti di clienti, e così per evitare le cose drammatiche, lasciare andare di gente nel tempo di crisi, abbiamo utilizzato questo concetto di network di teams per and I'm going to go to English because it's becoming too technical, to get people connected to each other, to get people connected outside of their normal role, outside of their normal job, bring them into that network of teams, and making sure that if we would have a market, for example, the Indian market was very badly hit by COVID, even more so than any market in Europe, at least in our experience, making sure that we could use a lot of expertise that we have in the Indian market within our associates, a lot of research experts that are sitting there now working with teams in Canada, working with teams in Italy, in the Netherlands, wherever, to make sure that we use that concept of network of teams, that if there's a bandwidth issue somewhere and there's a bandwidth opportunity somewhere else, if there's an expertise issue somewhere, if there's an expertise opportunity somewhere else, to bring those teams together. So for us, it gave the freedom to work on projects outside of our normal roles, and that helped us going. As an example, it's not as life-changing as Matteo's example, but it's what we did within our organization. Last thing that I want to talk about is purpose. Il scopo motivazionale, the reason for being, the why behind the what. If I look at my year, the first half was all about FMCG, was all about consumer goods. Now, if you're working at Nielsen and you're reporting out to a client that their market share is increasing, you're the client's best friend. If you're reporting out that the market share is decreasing, everybody hates you. That's a bit the context in which we operate. That is the reality of being a consultant, let's say. If you're bringing good news, everybody likes you. If you're bringing bad news, everybody hates you. That's together with an industry, the industry of supermarkets, the industry of consumer goods, that might not have been respected the way it should have been respected pre-COVID. It found another life, right? Everybody was looking now at the supermarkets, was looking at consumer goods as super vital within the crisis, being stuck at home,